Rod passed away. So let's, keep her and their family in our thoughts and prayers. And I think Patty will be giving additional information on funeral arrangements, things like that. So then on to birthdays. Jorge Morales has a birthday on February 3rd. And for member anniversaries, past president and honorary member Dan Roby celebrated 10 years with Rotary on February 1st. Tyree Boyer is celebrating 20 years with Rotary on February 6th. Richard Miller is celebrating 3 years with Rotary also on February 6th. And Ryan Baloney is celebrating 8 years on February 7th. And that's it for the Family of Rotary update.
Thanks, Christy, very much. So our club certainly shares in mourning the sudden loss of past President Vicki Lynn's husband and our friend, Rod Hidman. He's a very hardworking and dedicated and supportive true friend of Rotary and South Jacksonville Rotary family. Rod was our original gingerbread man in costume for the club's annual gingerbread extravaganza. And with Vicki Lynn serving as our first female club president, Rod will always be our club's first gentleman. Our thoughts, prayers, and heartfelt condolences are with past President Vicki Lynn and family. We will all miss Rod dearly. Our oratory regional event is in progress at Orange Park today, right now. Is that like right now, Lisa Marie? Oratory.
What about oratory?
So it's a yes. That's a yes. We'll just speak for yes. That's a yes. Good. Thanks, Lisa Marie.
My pleasure.
As you were. And again, future meeting dates are all posted on the DAC-DB calendar, and it's very important that you RSVP for any event that has an RSVP option. We have lots of people here today. We have lots to eat. We're able to do everything we need to do because you're doing such a good job RSVPing. Please keep that up. I also want to let you know that our Salvation Army bell ringing results were $856.96. So give yourself a hand for being so charming and persuasive while social distancing by those red kettles. So this number exceeds last year's total by 35%. So in a COVID year, that's a good thing. This year's date is already scheduled, so you can mark your calendars for Friday, December 3rd at the University Boulevard Publix. So I don't see anybody getting their phones out, so we'll follow up with that for you so that you can make sure that we're completely staffed. So is that Sarah Mitchell in the back? It is Sarah Mitchell in the back. President-elect Richard, would you like to come up and present a UCOM check for us today? Come on up.
Good afternoon. Our guest today is Sarah Mitchell, the director. Is that right? I know I'm terrible with titles.
Yeah.
Maybe you're the executive director.
Executive director, CEO, president. The one that makes the decision.
All right. Of United Community Outreach Ministries here in Jacksonville on St. Augustine Road. You may have been by their headquarters many times. It's very distinctive, and it's an antique house, isn't it?
It is. It was built in the mid-1800s. It was part of Red Bank Plantation, and the first thing that people did when they were free was pull the resources and build a church. So the city, along with Matt Carlucci's help, just at the turn of the century, at 2000, helped have the city donate that building to the use of Food Pantry Social Service Agency, economic development in South Jacksonville.
All right. During the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays, we made a collection for UCOM, and part of that you already have in your possession, food that's probably come and gone, and because you guys are so busy every time I'm there, wow. And as well, some gift cards that are probably at the same status, but we also have a check for you, which I would like to give you today, along with our thanks for your work in the community.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The food is gone and out the door. The gift cards, we work with making sure families have economic savvy, so they know what to spend and when to spend and what to put in their budget. So that's what it went towards. And thank you so much for your generosity, your food, that keeps us from having to spend the food. And thank you for this, I promise. And you can stop by anytime to see how we spend it. Our finances are on our website. We have an amazing board. If you're ever interested in leadership opportunity outside of Rotary, we do always have positions available. Well,
Sell it, Sarah. Sell it.
yes.
All right.
Thank you.
At any rate,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
all you do. Who doesn't want to be on another board, right? Right. This is a worthy one. They do a lot in the community. So mea culpa, mea apologies. Last week during our fun Founders Day PowerPoint review of members whose fathers were longtime members and past presidents, we totally omitted Laurie Whitmer and her mother, past President B.
Ooh.
I know, right? Did someone say mothers who were past president, who may have perhaps even won the Frank Sherman Award that day? Right. Yikes and ouch, Southjax Rotary glass ceiling. But, this would have never happened at Deerwood. Yeah, so glad we can laugh about that. Ooh. You'll all be relieved to know we have corrected the PowerPoint to include the ever gracious Bea and Laurie, along with all of our other presidents and progeny in all future celebrations. Thanks you two, we would never be the successful club that we are today without you. Martha Barrett, would you please introduce our visitors and guests today and prompt our pianist so we can hear the song?
John here.
Is that, who's that?
Yeah. Who is that? Thanks, Martha.
Thank you. Thank you. I have the great news. We have no visitors or guests today, except Patrick, who will be obviously introduced in a minute. And I forget my shoes. This is what you get when you work from home. I just walked out of my condo and I had some pretty shoes to wear and forget about it, But anyway, I think I'm going to start.
If you'll sing.
Yeah, I know. Acapella, Lisa Marie, come on up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Past President Jason Burnett, would you introduce our program today, please?
I am very happy and proud to introduce our program today. Happy that it's my good friend, Pat Kilbane, and proud of the person that Pat Kilbane is. He's he used to be my partner at Gray Robinson. And after that, he found a higher calling. He's what I would call a recovering attorney, but he is now general counsel to to Ullman Wealth Partners, which is located out at Ponte Vedra Beach, where he's both a wealth advisor and general counsel to that entity. And it's funny, Martha, what you just said about shoes. Earlier today, when I was thinking about my introduction for Pat, I started thinking about clothes and what we wear. And for instance, when you go to court, out of respect, you wear a coat and tie. But when you're amongst friends, you're much more casual. So where Pat, I think it's important for where he knows where I fall in the spectrum. I am wearing a collared shirt, but I'm not wearing pants. So it's a strange combination of respect and comfort that I have with Pat. Somebody else who has a lot of comfort with Pat have been the governors of the state of Florida, Pat has received 5 gubernatorial appointments to the Judicial Nominating Committee for our area, where Pat has really had a hand in shaping our judiciary. Also, Pat serves on the Jacksonville Aviation Authority, which is going to bring us up to date and tell us a lot about that. I hope that Pat and I remain friends, especially after our alma maters meet in football in September when Notre Dame plays FSU. Pat, I want the points. I just want to say that right now. I want the points. And with that, everybody, I'll introduce, please, warm welcome for Pat Kilbane.
Jason, thank you so very much. I've seen Jason introduce a lot of people, and I could have gotten it a lot worse than what he gave me. I'm well aware. So, but you know, the collared shirt and the Speedos on the bottom. Jason has always been business on the top and party in the bottom, right? So, Tom, thank you for having me. Thanks to this Rotary Club. There are so many wonderful friends and public servants that I've known for many, many years here. And I'm just proud of you all and what you do in the community and how you serve the community. And in particular, this Rotary Club and all the work that this club does. So you all should really be proud, and thank you for your dedication to Northeast Florida and how you serve in this capacity. So I currently serve as the chairman of the board of directors of the Jacksonville Aviation Authority. Most of you in this room, I'm sure, are part of our traveling public that have used one of our 4 airports. Oh, I'm sorry. Just a second, we're gonna move our sound here. We just suddenly lost sound. Okay.
We have an IT issue.
So let me just check 2 things. Sorry, folks. Okay. Really wanted to hear you.
Start this meeting over. Got any good jokes?
I do have some good jokes. I just don't know if this is the right audience.
Can you hear Patty, could you ask them to let us know as soon as they hear? I'm going to sign in here.
She's good.
Sound is low now.
I think that's a thumbs up, yeah.
So is sound, Jason, can you tell us if sound is normal?
Yeah, okay, Jason says yes.
Okay.
All right, I won't start that whole spiel over
Sorry.
again. But what I will say for the people who are joining us on Zoom, I've seen Jason Burnett introduce a lot of people, and I know I could have gotten it a whole lot worse than that. So, Jason, thank you for sparing me. And I will say, for the benefit of the people on Zoom, there are so many great public servants in this room, and in particular, I'm impressed with what your club does and with your speech contest. So thank you on behalf of everybody who benefits. As Jason said, my name is Pat Kilbane. I serve on the board of directors of the Jacksonville Aviation Authority, and believe it or not, this is going to be my 8th and final year as a board member. So just as I finally figure out what's going on, now it's time for me to leave. But for those of you, members of our traveling public who've used our airport, one of our airports, Jacksonville Aviation Authority is an independent authority that was created under a charter by the state of Florida. We're an independent body politic and part of the consolidated government of the city of Jacksonville. It's important to note that the Jacksonville Aviation Authority receives no general tax revenue. All of the revenue that we receive comes from people who use our airport system. So like any of your businesses, if our expenses exceed our revenues, we could go bankrupt. So how do we get revenue? I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but people who use our airports are charged fees for using the system. This includes our tenants, the airlines, concessionaires, people who park their cars at the airport, companies that lease land and buildings out at the airport. If you've been out to Craig Airport, you know that we even have a company that stores yachts on airport property. And there's a adult entertainment club at Craig Airport that's been grandfathered in, but it's soon to go. Thankfully, that's been an issue that we've had to deal with from time to time. We also receive grants from state and local governments, from fuel taxes and things like that assist us in our capital program. So that's a little bit of the overview of the airport system. And I want to keep this brief because I want to make sure that I leave sufficient time. We always get a lot of great questions about the airport, but I want to talk about 5 main areas, specifically, number one, what the board does. We always get a lot of questions about direct nonstop flights. I want to drill a little bit deeper into the finances of the airport, talk a little bit about that. We have this great asset called Cecil Airport, which a lot of you know as Cecil Field. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and of course, Craig Airport. Maybe we'll even entertain a question or two about the runway. Councilman Anderson's very familiar with the runway. So the board of directors of the Aviation Authority, what do we do? Well, first of all, there's 7 members of the board. 4 of us were appointed by the governor of the state of Florida, 3 by the mayor of Jacksonville, which works out pretty well. We all are allowed to serve only 2 terms. We're term limited. We can serve 2 4-year terms. The board is really responsible for 4 main things. We vote on and approve airport policy. We manage the employment and the compensation of our chief executive officer. We have some financial issues that we have to vote on and approve. Those include approving contracts with the signatory airlines. And when I say signatory airlines, I mean the Deltas, United, JetBlue, American, not necessarily the Silver or the Frontiers. We're responsible for approving the airport's budget and audit that we get from McGladrey every year. The airport budget, just to give you an idea of how large our airport budget is, pre-COVID, we were looking at an approximately $90 million a year annual budget. It's quite different now, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Any leases with any of our tenants that exceed 6 years, those have to come before the board for approval. Any budget transfers for capital projects north of $250,000, we have to approve those. We're responsible for the investment policy of the airport's funds, and you'll be happy to know that those funds are invested extremely conservatively, way more conservatively than I would have liked, and we talked about that at the last board meeting. And we're also responsible for approving contracts for the acquisition and sale of property. And finally, the last area that our board deals with, which sort of ties in with managing the CEO of strategic planning. So that's really kind of what the board does. It's a great board. I told our CEO when we hired him that we want to be like the left tackle or the IT person. You're a successful left tackle and an IT person if nobody knows who you are, right? If you're jumping off sides or holding, you know who the left tackle is. But the airport has done a really, really nice job of staying out of the news, which is a good thing. We let some of the other authorities take care of that. But yeah, the airport is doing a great job. So that's kind of an overview of what the board does and how the board works. Next thing I want to talk about is air service. One of the main questions that we get is, how do we get a flight to Seattle? How do we get a flight to Los Angeles? Why can't we fly to, I don't know, you pick the city, Cabo San Lucas, Paris. So you have to remember our airport's role, we're a landlord. If you want to boil it down and ask what does the Aviation Authority do, we're a landlord. The airlines are our tenants. Their airplanes, their aircraft, those are their assets. So our tenants make the decisions on what's the highest and best use of their assets. Now, we have all this data and we go to the airlines and we can show them, hey, look, these are how many people a day from our metropolitan statistical area there's a demand to fly to San Diego or Phoenix or Los Angeles, San Francisco, whatever. And the airlines generally have the same data. They just have to try to figure out what is going to be the most profitable route or routes for their aircraft. You know, it's interesting. Most of you, any of you who follow commercial passenger aviation news in Northeast Florida know that in March, even though in the middle of a pandemic, we just recently announced service that the Aviation Authority and JetBlue are going to fly direct nonstop once a day to Los Angeles International Airport. And interestingly, our largest unserved market with a direct nonstop flight was LAX. And Los Angeles's largest unserved market with a direct nonstop flight was Jacksonville. So both of the airports wanted to make it happen. And we finally got a carrier that said, yes, this makes good business sense. And the exciting thing for all of us in the room is once JetBlue comes and does it, well, then Delta's going to be watching. United's going to be watching. American's going to be united or watching, and that's going to invite competition for that route. So hopefully the idea is that we'll pick up some more routes. But COVID and everything else happening, it's always in flux. And one of the big developments was the Boeing 737 MAX 8 going back online. And it is more efficient for the airlines to get to the West Coast with that aircraft. It's hyper efficient, and I'm glad that all of those software kinks have been worked out and such, and the FAA has approved the MAX 8 to fly again. So for the traveling public who want more air service in Jacksonville, what's the best thing that we can do? Don't drive to Orlando and fly out of Orlando, because then you show up in Orlando's numbers. But everybody says, oh, well, it's cheaper, it's one flight. Well, if we keep going to Orlando, then we're never going to have the data to show the airlines that we need this flight. Here's the second thing that you can do. So if you have status on Delta and you need to fly to Dallas, you want to fly to Atlanta and then you fly to Dallas. But pre-COVID, we had 4 direct nonstop flights a day on American from Jacksonville to Dallas-Fort Worth. So if we're not taking those direct nonstop flights because you're worried about your medallion status on Delta, that's how we lose those flights, okay? I know it's inconvenient, but once we have the demand and we're using the direct nonstop routes, then we're less likely to lose them. Pre-COVID, Southwest was really interested in talking to us about direct nonstop flight service to Phoenix's Sky Harbor Airport. We were looking at some other things. Really, really happy to see the LAX service. 2007 was the last time we had flights to Los Angeles on Delta. Southwest recently announced new service to St. Louis. And St. Louis is another one of those Southwest hubs that can really get us out to the West Coast, just like Denver could. So that's a little bit about air service. Now let's talk about revenue and how the airport gets money and how we spend money and how we get money to build our new control towers and roads and repave the runways and things like that. I talked to Martha and some others before, but who could tell me what the #1 source of revenue at the airport is?
Landing fees?
Parking. So parking, we have with the airlines largely pay the overhead to operate the terminal as our tenant. And we have a revenue sharing agreement with concessions and rental cars, but the parking revenue is all ours. So all those offsite parking, the fly jacks and your programs, those are all taking away revenue from the airport to enhance our capital assets, okay? So if you can, our prices are just as good, if not better than theirs. They have successful businesses, but by parking at the airport, you're gonna help us build and enhance our physical plant and what we have at the airport. With COVID, our parking revenue, believe it or not, is down 72%. And for those of you who park at the airport, we have our hourly garage. Pre-COVID, it used to be $20 a day to park in the garage. It's down to 10. And the surface lot, the price of the surface lot, I don't know what it is now, but that's also been substantially reduced. The economy lots are closed because we're down about 60% in traveling passengers still from this time last year. Since we have substantially fewer passengers coming to the airport, we're not running the shuttle buses out to the economy lot. We've had to cut expenses substantially, and we had 310 employees pre-COVID, and our CEO in March offered voluntary separation packages to anybody who wanted to step up and take that package. So 52 employees took voluntary separation packages on April 10 of 2020. And I'll tell you, Mark Van Loo is the CEO of our airport, and we got him with 25 years of experience as an airport CEO. And I can tell you that we're better off for it because he was an airport CEO during 9/11. And 9/11 is the only event that could compare from a financial perspective to what airlines are dealing with. So if you follow aviation news around the state, Orlando, and Tampa just a couple months ago got around to offering these voluntary separation packages that our CEO did immediately right away. Doing two jobs. Devin Reed, who many of you may know in the room here, Devin was our director of procurement. Now he's our chief legal officer and still our director of procurement. So people are doubling up and really doing what they need to do. And you know, it's really interesting in terms of the terminal, the policies and procedures relating to the coronavirus that we've had in place. You've heard about outbreaks in all sorts of other places, but you haven't heard any outbreaks at Jacksonville International Airport and things that they're doing on the airplane. So with a substantially reduced team, I'm very proud, and I know I speak on behalf of the rest of the board about the job that our team has done to keep the traveling public safe. Another benefit of using our airport, there's a passenger facility charge. It's a $4.48 charge that's baked into every ticket that goes into our airport that the FAA will give us back that we can use to help improve the airport also. So lots of benefits of flying out of our airport. I know it may be a little bit more expensive, but think of the future investment that you're making in our region by using our airport. Let's talk about Cecil Airport. So our CEO not only has to manage a medium-sized commercial passenger airport, but in 1999, the federal government gifted us Cecil Airport and all the land and all the environmental problems that came with it. And they basically said, here's a ring of 5,000 keys. You figure out what to do with it. And you know, Cecil has really become an interesting success story. For those of you who follow economic development news in Jacksonville, the board just approved a 24-year lease with Boeing for approximately $140 million. It's the largest deal that our airport authority has ever done. So Cecil has really transformed itself from a rundown, unimproved military base that's contaminated a bunch to, you know, a really thriving, you know, economic engine for Jacksonville, specifically, you know, the west side of Jacksonville. And now Cecil accounts for approximately a third of all of the revenues that the aviation authority receives. And Cecil also is a commercially licensed horizontal spaceport. We're one of 10 in the country, and we're out in front on that. And of course, space is dominating the news, but you know, the only rockets that are going up are being shot up vertically. Cecil, our team doesn't have any plans for any vertical launches at Cecil. There's a myriad of issues that we'd have to deal with to become approved to launch vertical rockets. But a horizontal launch, there's going to be 737 aircrafts that are going to be retrofitted with a missile that will be able to shoot a load into space and take off just like regular aircraft will, get up to about 32,000 feet, dip down, and then the nose of the plane will point up and then shoot a rocket off. And you know, hopefully soon we'll be shooting satellites into space from a horizontal takeoff from Cecil Airport. There's a tenant called Generation Orbit that is out at Cecil. Pre-COVID, they were scheduled to do their first test in October, but obviously that's been pushed back. So look at Cecil continuing to grow. Our board just had a special strategic planning session centered around Cecil. There's a lot of people in the business community that really want us to spend money at Cecil, but there's been no horizontal launch of a rocket in the United States ever. So, you know, this could literally be an unbelievable economic opportunity, or it could be a bridge to nowhere, literally a bridge to nowhere. So I think we're trying to take a balanced approach of building an infrastructure out there that can be repurposed for the other tenants that use Cecil in future growth, but mindful that we want to be first in line to get any business in the horizontal launch space. So if you haven't been out at Cecil, if you ever want a tour to see what's going on out there, fascinating facility. It would even host the president of the United States for a rally if he wanted. So we did that too. Lastly, let's talk a little bit about Craig Airport, which is called Jacksonville Executive at Craig Airport. Craig Airport is our city's executive airport. And the interesting issue with Craig Airport is The runway, the main runway is 4,400 feet. The runway needs to be, any pilot will tell you, 6,000 feet for it to be viable for any insurance carrier to insure private jets landing and taking off at Craig. Problem is, there was a prohibition in our city's charter from expanding that runway, and the people who live in and around Craig Airport, the last thing that they want to see is Craig Airport turn into like a Chicago Midway airport. So the Aviation Authority always has this push and pull with the citizens and the business community who want that airport to be a true business airport for the city, and the people and the neighbors of Craig Airport who don't want that to have anything to do with an executive airport. So the Aviation Authority's official position on expanding the runway at Craig is when the city council and the mayor's office tell us that it's time, we're all in. That's a city asset. That's an asset of Northeast Florida. From a pure aviation standpoint, it needs to be extended, but we all know that there's a lot of other issues that go with that. So anyway, with all that being said, those are the 5 areas that I wanted to cover. I'd love to, entertain any questions that anybody has.
Do we have any we skipped them last week, the folks on Zoom, if they'd unmute?
Yes.
So do you have a question, Jason, or has anybody else on Zoom got a question?
Pat, when is the adult entertainment establishment closing?
Not soon enough, and that's what I expected from Jason.
I'm pretending I don't know the name of it.
Listen, we'll make sure you get there before it closes, I promise. Yes, sir.
It's hard to follow that question.
I know.
Prior to COVID, when business was good, how many departures and arrivals would JAA have in a good day?
I'm glad you asked.
Can you restate the question?
Yeah, so the question from the gentleman to my right was, on a good day in pre-COVID times, how many departures and arrivals? So I haven't done it by day, but I did it by month. Let's look at April 2020. April 2020 was the first full month that we were impacted by COVID, and was one of the highest passenger traffic months in the history of the airport. So in-plane and deplaned passengers in April of 2019, we had 624,341 people come through our airport in that month. Guess how many people in-plane and deplaned we had in the month of April 2020? 27,403. And for those of you scoring at home, that's a decrease of 95.6%. Wow. So imagine being our finance director, Ross, trying to crunch numbers and budget for an airport that all of a sudden the spigot gets turned off and we have virtually no revenue. Now, the CARES Act was a godsend for airports because, we got $32 million, I believe, from the CARES Act, which gave us about $8 million for about 4 months to work with, which allowed us to help make those voluntary separations, cut maintenance projects and other things to get a handle on the revenues. Now, to give you a comparison, let's look at December 2019 versus December 2020. So 603,898 in plane and deplane. And then December 2020, we had 233,525. So now we've kind of plateaued where we're down about 62% from the prior year. Hopefully vaccines, people will get them and they'll work, and it will give the traveling public confidence to come back and fly and get back to conferences and things like that. So awesome question, very sober numbers. But again, I'm really proud of our team about how, especially Ross and the finance team, how they've gotten out in front of this and they've really managed the expenses. Yes, ma'am.
Patrick, thank you for being here today.
Sure.
So I actually have 2 questions. You can choose what you want. Do you envision, this is more global about aviation, do you envision that the players that we have today, big players post-pandemic, is that going to shrink? That's the first question. And the second question is there a concern in general across airports in safety? Because we have pilots that have been out, they have no currency, they haven't been flying, and all of a sudden they're getting back into the cockpit. How about safety in the future, post the pandemic?
Awesome questions. Thank you. So you said I get to pick one. Do I have to answer both of
Well,
them?
yeah, President Tom says you can answer both. I love answers to both.
Okay. Yeah. So for those on Zoom, I got 2 questions. Number 1 was, I guess, do I forecast any consolidation in the airport, any further consolidation? And then what about safety? We have a lot of pilots that are getting ready to be on the verge of retirement. Sure, both issues are a concern. We've seen a lot of consolidation over the years. Think of TWA and Northwest Airlines, US Air. What are some of the AirTran that have all been gobbled up? But you know, the interesting thing is during the pandemic, we have an airline called Silver Airways, which connects a lot of the Florida cities that a lot of the large signatories don't capture. And you know, Silver just announced service back to Tampa. I don't know if some of you saw Greenville, South Carolina is one of our new destinations, and Silver will be going back to the Bahamas so we can legitimately call ourselves an international airport again. So it's always a concern. I mean, some private equity group is always going to want to put together one of those deals if they can, but I'm hopeful that this thing will end and the allegiance and the frontiers and the spirits that you saw really move into this market will continue to do that and give a different option for our traveling public. And I know there was a discount European airline that we were talking to about connecting Jacksonville to the European continent with one flight. So, you know, who knows when that will come back on. And then safety, certainly a concern. You know, a lot of the pilots now served in the military and had that training. And I suspect that, you know, training will get more sophisticated with technology. And my guess is the FAA will figure that issue out. Yes, ma'am.
Can you extend, since there's the problem of Craig, can Furlong be extended?
You know, I don't, the question is, can the Furlong runway be extended? I think the Furlong runways don't need to be extended. Off the top of my head, I don't know their length, but Furlong is so close to Cecil. And as many of you know, Cecil Airport has the 3rd longest runway in the country. The Cecil Airport is 12,500 feet. The issue with Craig is the people at the beach don't want to drive to Furlong. The people with the means to fly privately want that option, and we're losing a lot of them to St. Augustine. And there's been some other ideas floated around, but you know, and I didn't mention Furlong, and we love Furlong, but Furlong is a recreational airport where you see a lot of people, they fly in glider planes and things like that. So Furlong is a different setup. Furlong, you know, may not necessarily have all the infrastructure capabilities to take care of that. But the issue with Craig is its location, proximity to downtown, proximity to the beach. So, yes, Your Honor.
Kind of wondering, you indicated before that you all track, of course, the numbers are coming in and going out, and you know where they're going. You know, I walk in, I'm going to take Delta to Atlanta and go to LA. If I make my reservation with Delta, to use my example, and I check in with Delta, and I go to the gate at Delta, flying, how do you guys know? How do you get that data?
I don't know how exactly we get that data, but we have a marketing person named Barbara Halberstadt. She's our director of marketing and new air service development. Somehow she gets that data. I will find that answer out.
I'm just curious. Maybe they have to give it to you, I would think.
You know, and I'll get that. I'll get that for you. But somehow she's got it and can go to them and say, look, here are the numbers that we have.
Right.
So, any other?
Yeah.
Councilman.
So you're coming up on the end of your service, and you've done a great job. And thank you for being here.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So if you look back, are there one or two sort of moments that you could kind of say, I'm really proud we did this, or we, you know, when you're kind of in retrospect?
Sure. Thank you. Well, this is my second time as chairman. Councilman Anderson asked if there were one or two moments that I'm most proud of. During my first stint as chair, that's when we dealt with Hurricane Matthew. What was the one that came in Jacksonville in 2017? Irma or Matthew? Whichever one impacted us. I was chairman during that, so I was on the phone with City Hall and our team and going back and forth and watching the coordination and getting all of the updates. So I was very, very impressed at how our team handled that emergency response. Also, the pet relief station, we cut the ribbon for the pet relief station during my time too. So that's another one. And second, we replaced Steve Grossman as our longtime CEO. Steve, as you know, succeeded John Clark. Steve spoke to this Rotary Club, I'm sure. I have the highest personal and professional regard for Steve Grossman. He did an outstanding job with our airport. So when you get somebody like Steve, you always kind of wonder, gosh, are you going to find, who's going to be the person that's going to replace a Steve Grossman? And I was asked to chair our selection committee that found Mark Van Loo. We used a selection committee called ADK Search, and they only specialize in placing airline executives. And Doug Keltman, who actually lives in Atlantic Beach, who is the CEO of this firm, he went to each board member, so we didn't violate sunshine laws, and asked, what are you looking for? And our number one issue was we wanted somebody with experience. And, as I previously mentioned, Mark had 25 years of experience, and he ran Cleveland, Tulsa, Kansas City International Airport for 12 years. He was a CEO at Toledo as a really young man. So to get him at this time was a godsend to manage all the COVID stuff, and not to pick on some of our other independent authorities, but you can see what happens if you get a CEO that doesn't have experience. And to get somebody seasoned, who's been around the sun so many times, who's not afraid to buckle to political pressures or whatever else, I really think that's not something that's going to show up on the surface, but it's one thing that I can say, look, our board did the right thing, and we really focused on getting the absolute best person for the job. So, yes, sir.
Is Concourse B dead forever or just for a good 25 years?
Thank you. That's a great question, and it's a sad one to hear, because obviously for many years we worked on Concourse B. Concourse B was approved by our board sometime 2018, and the plan, the architectural plans, the design was for 6 additional gates with the ability to go to 10. And it's already been designed. So those plans are on the shelf. So Concourse B is not dead forever. Whenever it picks back up, we already have Concourse B designed. And the design is going to be kind of a double-decker design, so we can get more retail and dining. The gates will be on the bottom floor, and it'll be on the top. But I was looking forward to breaking ground and going out there with one of those gold shovels and all those things, but that's not going to happen anytime soon, unfortunately. Maybe 3 to 5 years, but it's not dead. It's certainly not dead.
Okay.
And there was another question.
I was going to ask about Concourse B as well.
Does anyone else want to know about Concourse B? Yes, sir.
Well, I just flew out of Denver, and I noticed their Concourse C, they're building, looks like 300 more feet of stuff on it. They're really expanding over there, mostly because of Southwest. The Southwest is robust here in Jacksonville as it is there. They've kicked everybody out of that concourse. I think they let one Delta plane land every so often, and Southwest has just taken over the whole thing.
Yeah. So the question was, how robust is Southwest service at Jacksonville? The nice thing is we've got Delta is our dominant, is our most prolific signatory airline, but not by a whole lot. We have a lot of good diversity with Southwest. Probably accounts for about 20% of our service. And Southwest, if you follow Southwest, they're kind of realigning their business plan. So they would fly into like Hobby Airport, Chicago Midway, Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood. But now you see them going into Miami International and O'Hare, and they're starting to pull out of their more traditional airports. So we had service direct nonstop to Chicago Midway, but now, you know, they've pulled it back. I don't know if it's coming back.
And Las Vegas.
And Las Vegas, trust me, I know. But we just got service to St. Louis, and St. Louis is a larger hub. And you know, I'm not familiar with the Denver expansion plans, but if they're still going full tilt on that expansion, that tells me that it was in the works way before our Concourse B plans were in effect. Yes, sir.
So your number one generator of revenue is parking, and you're encouraging us to use airport parking as opposed to off-site parking. You feel like you compete with off-site parking? Because I can tell you, when I use off-site parking, they pick me up right at the car, they load my bags for me, they take me right to the check-in area, they unload my bags for me, and the times when I park in airport parking, there's nothing like that service. And it's a maze to get there, and if you park way out, then, you know, so there are other ways to compete other than on price. You said you're price competitive, but
And every so time you get a free parking.
Yeah. So the question was about parking and whether we're competitors. So it's true they have different services. As you know, we've got a valet parking service at our airport, so you can literally drive your car right up to the gate and get out, and those people may be able to drop you off, but you got to wait for them and take your car back. Certainly, if you park in the garage, you walk a few hundred feet. The escalator will assist you if you need it, and get right in there. So true, they have different services, but their parking revenues go to benefit their shareholders. Our parking revenues go to benefit our capital improvement program. So, Robert, you had a question.
I was just going to say, there's private aircraft that fly out of JAA as well, right? The different carriers. And I don't understand the constant flat with Craig, and I understand, is it just logistics?
Some people don't want to make that extra 15-20-minute drive out to JIA and use Shelter Air.
Do you ever see that happen? Do you ever see them actually limiting that? I understand that's a commentary on, it's just gotten slammed every time.
Is it possible? Sure, but it's going to take, I mean, I know that anybody who runs for city council in that district, there's a group of people that make them sign a pledge that says, listen, if you're a vote to extend the runway, you're not going to get our support. Malone Air Charter and some of the other tenants, they used to come to our meetings, and public comment every single time was about expanding the runway at Craig. And finally, I was new on the board, and I kept hearing the same thing over and over again. And I told Steve, our CEO, look, on our website, we have a frequently asked questions tab. Put the airport's official position on Craig on the frequently asked questions tab so everybody knows. And I'm not ducking the question. I'm the one who raised it. From a pure aviation standpoint, if this city wants to have a true executive airport like they have in Miami or West Palm or wherever, the runway needs to be extended. But again, we're happy community partners with the city. We've got a great relationship with Cecil Commerce Center. We don't want to do anything that's going to get the city council or the mayor's office sideways with us. So when everybody gets together and decides that this is a community asset that we need, airport authority's all in. There's been, Judge Corrigan had a case a couple years ago. As I was preparing for this talk, I was going through my materials, and where he wrote a very interesting opinion in 2012 on the runway extension at Craig. So it's heavily litigated. It's been around forever. It's been around for a long time. We just need to get everybody on the same page and figure out what we want Craig Airport to be. Yes, sir.
Southwest used to go from direct flight straight to Norfolk. Why did they stop that direct flight straight to Norfolk, and are they ever going to bring it back?
It's a good question. The question was, we used to have Southwest service to Norfolk, and it's gone. Why? That's a Southwest business decision. Next time I ever run into the Southwest rep, I ask. Again, we had, so I asked them, people ask me the same question more frequently about Las Vegas. And what they say is, well, the Las Vegas flight is what they call a non-revenue flight because everybody uses their miles to go to Las Vegas. And my argument back to them is, well, people have those miles because they have the Southwest credit card, and you generate revenue from the credit card. So it seems like your cost accountants need to figure out how to make that a revenue flight, because I bet it is a revenue flight. You know, if they find a different market that has more demand, maybe there wasn't a lot of demand from Jacksonville to Norfolk or you know, whatever, but it has to do with demand and how much revenue they can squeeze out of every seat on that aircraft.
Selling alcohol
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say, I love the call waiting or the lot that you have to wait for the planes. The billboard is one of the most informative, and I've been in many airports waiting sections. That's very good. And also access to the bathroom is essential. So that's a very good space to change.
You know, thank you for that. We I got a comment about how great the message board is in the courtesy waiting lot and the bathrooms. You know, there's surveys in the airport, and we really want all the constructive feedback that you can give us to how to make that facility as user-friendly as possible. And for those of you who are familiar with Erin Burnett, she's the host of Out Front on CNN. She was in Jacksonville covering a presidential debate, and she got stranded at Jacksonville International Airport. You can find this on YouTube. But in the middle of her show, she's talking about the layover and the debate, and then she went off on a tangent about how great Jacksonville International Airport is. And of course, we love that and harvest it and use it wherever we can. But the bathroom remodel, you know, we got a lot of feedback. And as you notice, the bathrooms have been redone all throughout the terminal. And, you know, we did, you know, 2 of them at a time. So we weren't taking, you know, all the bath. I mean, it was very strategic, very well done. And, you know, there's always, you know, sometimes where the paper towels pile up. And of course, my thought was, well, just get those things, you know, the blowers where you put your hands under them. But I guess those have their own problems with spreading E. coli around and all these things. So thank you for that. It's very well thought out. And if you have any other improvements that you like to see to the airport when you're waiting for your flight, fill out one of those cards and stick it in the box. There's a trade organization called the Airports Council International that gives airports awards based on the customer service metrics. So we want that feedback. We really love the positive feedback, but certainly the constructive feedback helps us make the airport better. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Oh. Ron Patrick.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but
loud and clear.
Okay, great. So I'm going to completely go off topic here and ask Patrick about something completely unrelated. But I believe I read in the newspaper, Patrick, sometime back that you went to Notre Dame Law and were a student of our newest Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett while you were there. And before you leave today, thank you for joining us today. Very insightful, by the way. But I also would like to hear your thoughts on your experience with Amy Coney Barrett and some of your thoughts on our newest Supreme Court Justice.
Thank you. So the question was about, in a prior life, I went to law school, and I took 2 classes from our newest Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, and she's been a friend of mine for 20 years. And my thoughts on her, let's put all politics aside. She is one of the most amazing people that you'll ever meet. In fact, I was at a conference in Orlando, a continuing legal education conference this weekend, and one of the panels was, how is the court going to change, and what kind of cases are the justices going to take now that Justice Barrett is on the court? And there was a concurrent professor from Notre Dame who's in the political science department and at the law school and he says, everybody else calls her Justice Barrett. Well, in our house, she's Emma's mom because her daughter Emma babysits for their kids. For those of you who followed any of this, we had then Professor Amy Barrett come to Jacksonville and give a speech at Jacksonville University in 2016 in November before the presidential election. And no joke, 4 days before the presidential election, her speech was on judicial philosophy and who the justices and the judges were going to be, assuming President Clinton won. And if this Republican challenger wins, who are those people going to be? Well, turns out 3 months later, he appointed her to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. And if you all remember, he had a list at that time of 20 people who he would consider appointing to the Supreme Court. And after she got appointed to the appellate court, he amended it and tacked her on there. Well, then Justice Kennedy retires. All of a sudden, she's one of the 4 finalists for the seat that Justice Kavanaugh got. So again, I tell you, she and I are friends, and we're texting back and forth. This was around 4th of July, 2018. And the interesting thing about her, you know, Justice Kavanaugh was on the DC Circuit and was in Washington, DC for 14 years. Justice Barrett clerked for Scalia, but had been in academia for 15 years. She is not political at all. And to see her ascend to the highest court in the country on merit alone and not any political connections is the thing that I'm most proud of. And she's as normal and as wonderful and as good as everything that you've read about her. So it's hard for me not to continue to just, you know, keep laying it on thick, but she is truly a very special person. She will take the job seriously, as those of you who have already seen in the election cases that involve the president. She was, you know, voted along with everybody else that, you know, there was no standing in those cases to challenge the election results. So she's faithful, she's smart, she's a great mom. I know she's.
And a fascinating part of the story is when that occurred during the seminar, Patrick texted her about the comment, and she within 30 seconds texted right back to her about the comment. So there's a nice little relationship.
Yeah,
there.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, she's, I know that wasn't about airports, but I appreciate the question. And yeah, I'm just super proud of her. And I know she's, I mean, you want to talk about service, having 7 kids and have your husband stay at home in South Bend while you're in DC and you're a mom to 7. What can you say? So, yes, sir.
This is not as much fun as the last question, but back you said for $10 I can park right next to the parking, the multi-story parking lot.
In the garage right now, I think there may be a little bit of a price increase coming up, but yeah, for the garage.
I've got a flight scheduled later this month. When will that? Right.
February 1st. Yeah. Sure.
Perhaps you'd hang around if anybody else has.
Sure, glad
to. Yes, and
all right. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much. And I would also like to say that as a thank you, we're going to make a contribution in your honor to the Rotary International Foundation for Polio Plus and the eradication of polio.
Great, thank you.
In a lifetime. And that's
thank you so much.
As a resident. Thank you. Thank you. All right, it's time for me to remind you again to RSVP. You're doing such a great job. Keep up the good work. Every meeting, anything that you want to attend, you need to let Patty know. And next week, our speaker will be Dr. Carlene Taylor and Eli from UNF's Animal Intervention Initiative. Love that. As we end our meeting, please join me in the Rotary motto: service above self, one profit, best. See you next week.